Welcome to Type Tune Tint. I'm Tom Kranz. The majesty of the sea and the spray of the ocean water are almost palpable in today's episode thanks to my guest, Bob Gonzalez, whose passion for deep-sea fishing comes alive in his book, A Flicker in the Water. It's not just a story of catching fish, it's a deep dive into the emotional and historic bonds man has with the sea, epic battles with gigantic creatures, and cheerful tales of a lifelong father-son relationship. And I'm joined right now by Bob Gonzalez, lifetime fisherman and author. The new book is called A Flicker in the Water, and we're going to talk in detail about his life as a fisherman, about fishing. Bob joins us from his palatial estate in Destin, Florida, and I join you from my palatial estate in Little Fanwood, New Jersey. Bob, thanks for getting up at a fairly early hour and connecting with me today. This is great.
Well, hello, Tom, and don't worry about the hour. Fishermen like to get up early.
Yeah, I'm usually up by 5:32. I don't even know why. Ever since I retired, my body clock is totally screwed up, but it's okay. By 9 o'clock, my day's half over usually. So as I said, the reason we're here is your book, A Flicker in the Water, which is really it's a kind of a first person account, although you kind of tell it in the third person. You referred to Bob Jr. and Bob Sr. instead of me. And that's okay. I kind of get it. But let's talk about, first of all, a little bit of your background. You're 30-year Floridian, and I'm guessing a lifetime fisherman. Where did you first get the fishing bug? Did you get it from? Is it in your genes, or did you learn it, or did your dad pass it down, or how did that happen?
Well, I liked it from the time I was a little kid. 7, 8 years old. I used to like to catch fish, and even in the lakes, in the freshwater, bluegills and sunnies. And I used to fish with my dad in New Jersey at Barnegat Light. We would go every summer. I was raised in Pennsylvania, but we used to travel to Barnegat Light, New Jersey, and fish for bluefish, and then in the summer and cod in the winter. And he actually grew up in Cuba, where there was a lot of fishing. Santiago de Cuba, where they have a lot of wahoos and dolphins, and yeah. So that's where I got my first taste of it, was in New Jersey.
Cool. Yeah. Well, so I'm of course familiar with where Barnegat Light is. New Jersey is one of my, and full transparency to both you, your dad, and my viewers and my listeners. I am not a fishing guy. I've been fishing in my 68 years of life exactly twice. One time when I was a teenager, I went out on a friend's rowboat on a lake in the Pocono Mountains.
Okay.
And we caught these little fish called sunfish.
Yeah.
Right? They're not eating fish. They're these beautiful little yellowish orange fish. And we caught them and then we threw them back. And I said, oh, this is kind of cool. And then the second time I fished, I was an adult. My wife and I went out on a friend's Boston Whaler, which is a small kind of flat bottom fishing boat, into the bay off of Ocean City, New Jersey. And the sea was really choppy that day. We didn't go out really far, but it was so rough. I was sick the entire time. The good news is I never actually puked, but I just didn't have a great time. But my friend Steve caught this very nice sized, very ugly fish. He called it a tog. Does that mean anything to you?
I've heard of them. Yeah. I think I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure. He wasn't 100% sure what it was anyway, but he caught something. And this was years ago. So that's my sum total of knowledge about fishing, other than what I've seen in movies and on TV. To me, deep sea fishing, I think of the film Jaws. And, I saw a couple of parallels in your book, the whole idea that you're fighting with this large beast and maybe you're going to get him and maybe he breaks away. So what I liked about A Flicker in the Water is that it talks about more than just kind of the catching of the fish. It's about being out with nature. It's being on the sea. It's appreciating things like, the fact that you're out there, the fact that we have this incredible natural resource. And I'm guessing that's part of the lure for you as well, correct?
Oh, yeah, definitely. When you're out there on the ocean, it's just you and the sky and the water. And there's something very soul satisfying about being out there, for sure.
So you're primarily a deep sea fisherman, correct?
Primarily, yeah.
And so that means you go out into your home port is Destin, Florida, which is Florida Panhandle, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Right.
What I know mostly about Destin is when I worked in the news business, the Destin was often the bullseye for a hurricane. Hopefully, you don't
Mhm.
have any of those this year. But you write a lot about going into the Gulf. You see like the big oil rigs in the background, and you go out far enough so that you don't actually see anything. All you see is ocean all around. What's that like, especially in the early days? Is that scary at all?
It doesn't phase me at all. I know a lot of people don't like that. They like to be able to see land from where they are, but I don't know. To me, you have your instruments, your navigational tools, your compass. You don't really need to see the land. It doesn't bother me at all, really.
And A Flicker in the Water is your second book, as I understand, correct? Tell us
Mhm.
about your first book. What was that called and what's it about?
It's Eagles Claws for Freedom's Cause. It's basically about happenings in our country and about politics and things like that. So I wanted to do a little bit different one this time and do about nature and fishing and that sort of thing.
Yeah, good. And so I've seen on your website, I've seen that you've been on some other interviews and podcasts, and you do
Hmm.
spend a lot of time about talking about kind of harnessing happiness. And that's kind of that's my short,
Yeah.
yours. But it sounds like you found, in fishing anyway, you kind of solved that to some extent. Yes.
Well, it's something I love to do, although I have had my experiences, like you say, where I've been tossed around. In fact, the other day I said I felt like a piece of loose change in the washing machine. It was so rough out there.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, that happened like a week ago, and I get a little woozy myself, but it's never stopped me from going. When I was a kid, I got sick a few times, and I still went, and we still had some great catches some of those days.
What do you do for work?
I have a small business. In fact, that's why I came here to Destin originally. I make the soft pretzels, the hand rolled soft pretzels in a
Oh,
mall.
really?
Yeah, yeah. And with this, the name of the store is the Pretzel Twister, so I named the boat the Twister.
We have to talk offline because I make German soft pretzels.
Okay.
I make them from scratch and I hand roll them. What a pain.
Hmm.
But I do
Yeah.
it. I hand roll them and I form them. And man, they come out. I mean, the recipe I use is fairly basic. I mean, it's
Mm.
basically water and yeast and
Yeah.
flour and a little bit of
Yeah.
salt, a little bit of sugar.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
all in, the
Yeah.
kind of rise you get. But I think that's really, boy, talk about a small world. You make pretzels, huh? So now I
Well,
got
yeah.
to come to Destin and try one of your pretzels.
Yeah.
Damn. So you're not talking about fishing. We're talking about pretzels. So we swish pan back to your other life.
Yeah.
So you said that you have your family has Cuban roots. Your dad was born and raised in Cuba. When did he come here? And were you born there as well, or you were born here?
I was born here in New York.
Okay. And how long's
Yeah.
your dad been here?
He came here around age 14 and he's been here ever since. I don't know if he'd want to admit this. He's 82 now. But he's been here since about age 14.
And you guys still fish together?
Yeah, we just went last week. We caught some snappers and some groupers and a couple other kingfish and a tuna.
Father and son fishing seems to be one of those iconic I guess father son events that it's like having a catch with your kid. It's just
Yeah.
one of the ultimate ways of father and son to bond. And you've
Mhm.
been doing it all your life, pretty much, right?
Pretty much. Yeah. 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 He got me started early. When I was a kid, I went with him a lot and we could just continue doing it.
All right. So you sent me a couple of pictures, and I want to talk
Mhm.
about this one picture about this fish called the fish you call marble eye.
Amberjack.
Amberjack, right? Here's this picture that's in your book, and it's also mentioned. I think Mariel Hemingway mentions it in your forward. By the way, we have to talk in a minute how you got Mariel Hemingway to write your
Yeah.
forward. We'll
All
get to
right.
that. But there's this picture of you and your dad on the deck of the boat, the Twister, and you've got this amberjack hanging on a hook, and that sucker's like as big as you are.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
a typical size for that fish, or what's the deal?
No, that was a really big amberjack. They don't get that big very often. That was a once in a lifetime amberjack catch.
So how long did it take you to reel him in?
About 45 minutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he made multiple runs. See, when you fish for amberjack, you fish for them off the bottom. and this one was caught on the bottom. After he played with the bait a little bit, and you could tell there was a fish down there, but we weren't sure what. And all of a sudden, he just knew. After he knew he was hooked, he went on this tremendous run. He's peeling line, and I had to throw the boat in gear to pull him out because they'll go back in the crevices, in the shipwrecks. They'll get tangled up in there and stuff. So we pulled him out of there, and he made several, 4 or 5 runs, and finally you saw these bubbles coming up from the bottom of the water. I'm thinking, what is this thing? I thought maybe a grouper or something, or a shark, but it turned out a big whoosh came up in the water, belly
Wow.
up, and it turned out to be this fish that I named Marble Eye, a greater amberjack, they call that.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So you'd have to put that in as among your top 10 catches, I would imagine.
oh yeah, easily,
Maybe
yeah,
top
top
5
5,
even.
yeah, yeah.
So what do you do with an amberjack that size once you catch him? Do you eat him or do you mount? What do you do with a fish like that?
Yeah, you can eat him. This was an old fish. That's why I named him Marble Eye, because he was blind in one eye. He had no pupil. It just looked like a blue marble in one eye. And yeah, so we did take him to the fish market, though. They're edible. They're very good too.
So you take it to a fish market and they buy it or they butcher it or they sell it or you get it back or and eat it yourself or what do you do?
No, they buy it and then they
Okay.
distribute it to restaurants and things.
And so
Yeah.
that's what you do with the fish you catch in general. You sell them to other people.
Well, we eat most of our own. Most fish aren't that big, so we usually catch 10 to 20 pound fish, and we eat those most of the time. But fish like that, we could take to the market, and then they distribute them. Yeah.
I got it. So I go back to, and forgive me for, invoking the cliche of Jaws again, but
Mm.
there's that one scene when, they got the lines in the water and, Quint is yelling and screaming at Richard Dreyfuss. And suddenly he sees the line jerking and he hears it go boom. And then just like you just described, suddenly it goes zoom and the
Yeah.
line starts
Yeah.
heading out. And that means he's
Yeah.
caught the shark and it just keeps going and going and going. Is
Mhm.
that what happened in this case? And is that what happens often with those bigger fish?
Oh yeah, that happens all the time with the big fish. They don't give up very easily. You gotta, you have to fight them a long time sometimes before they subdue.
Well, so that must be a rush of adrenaline when you hear that,
Oh
when you see
yeah.
that. That's like, game on, baby.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there's nothing like it. This the adrenaline rush is unbelievable. In fact, I said in the book, I couldn't even form coherent thoughts for like a week after that.
What is the longest you've ever fought with a fish?
Probably like 4 or 5 hours.
Is that
That's in
right?
fact, yeah, that fish was the fish that inspired the title of the book, A Flicker in the Water,
Really?
because yeah, it was hooked and we didn't know what it was, but this one took out so much line we had to attach another fishing rod with another line to it, and it almost took all the line out of that one. So I tell the
Well,
story in the book on this one. This was a big, massive tuna. But yeah, we fought this one for 4 or 5 hours.
wow. And so do you take
Mm.
turns then, or do you actually, is it just one guy sitting there for 5 hours and then you collapse in sheer exhaustion, or what do you do?
Well, everybody has a different job to do. You have your rod guy. I mean, you can switch, but if you're after record breaking fish, not saying we were, but if you happen to catch one, they won't accept it unless it's one guy on the rod. You can't hand over the
Oh,
rod. In fact, they're not even allowed to touch the rod for it to count.
really?
So yeah, yeah, they have really strict rules in the IGFA on record fish. So if you're ever out there and you hook a big one, don't let anybody touch that rod.
No kidding.
So
I had no
yeah,
idea.
yeah,
See,
yeah.
all I've learned in the last 13 minutes here. All right. So we're going to get into more about why you decided to write a book and how you write and all that stuff. We'll get into that in some detail. But first, we're going to take a little break and I'm going to do some shameless self promotion for one of my books. We'll be back in just a minute, folks, with Bob Gonzalez. Back with author and fisherman Bob Gonzalez, author of the book A Flicker in the Water. How long's the book been out now?
About a year and 2 or 3 months.
Okay, and it's available on Amazon and on a website called flickerinthewater.com, I'm guessing.
Yeah, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere books are sold, and my website, flickerinthewater.com.
Yeah, so I
And there's
do
a
want
lot
to.
of stuff on that website that's not in the book. Like you said, there's videos there and interesting things about the ocean.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah, there were like,
Mm.
yeah, nautical terms and
Yeah.
a little bit more about you. And
Mm.
yeah, it's very cool. It says right on the cover, forward by Marielle Hemingway. How did that
Yeah.
happen?
Well, Mariel works with my publisher, Mindster Media, and they give her scripts and they give her manuscripts, and if she likes them, she'll work with you and endorse them. And thankfully, she liked mine because I think it hit close to her home for her because Old Man and the Sea was written in Cuba at the time my dad was there. So we described events in Cuba, and we described, in fact, her name Mariel comes from the port of Mariel, which is near Havana, Cuba, where Old Man and the Sea was written. So my dad was on the other side of the island in Santiago, which is actually the main character's name in Old Man and the Sea. So it was a natural fit, and she enjoyed it. She said it spoke to her with deep appreciation, and I was really grateful for that.
Well, that's awesome. So Marielle
Yeah.
Hemingway, former, I don't know if she's still doing any acting, but her father was Ernest Hemingway, right?
Her grandfather.
Grandfather, that's what I meant. And
Mm.
so you just got a phone call one day and said Marielle Hemingway is going to write your forward.
Well, we communicated online. I sent her the manuscript, and she wrote back saying she loved it, and that's how it all got started.
Well, that's great. And she writes, in really glowing terms about the book and about why it connects with her. I'm not an expert on Hemingway like she obviously is, but I can definitely see the parallels in the
Mm.
whole battle with the sea and the fish.
Yeah, yeah.
That's certainly reminiscent of what your book is about.
Mm.
How long did it take you to actually get around to start putting words on
Mm.
paper?
Well, I knew that I wasn't fishing as much because we had just sold the boat and we were looking for other ways to continue fishing. So I thought, maybe I should write a book about my experiences that I think people can enjoy and even learn some things from. I learned a lot myself when I was writing the book. There's a lot of stuff I didn't know that was really interesting. I'll give you one example. The Sea of Galilee is actually a freshwater lake.
Oh yeah, I've actually
Yeah,
been there. I went to Israel back years ago for a TV station,
yeah,
and yeah,
yeah.
it's not right. It's a lake.
Yeah, yeah, and the Mediterranean Sea, as wide as it is and as big as it is, the only entrance is 11 miles long. That's
Hmm,
it.
hmm.
11 miles. I don't know how fish get in and out of there, but they do because the Mediterranean is a great place to fish.
Have you ever fished in places other than the Atlantic or the Gulf?
uh, I know just the Atlantic and the
So
Gulf
you
for
haven't
me.
fished
Yeah.
internationally yet.
No,
Well,
no.
that's got to be on your list of things to do, right?
It's on my list. Yeah, yeah.
I want to let people watching and listening know that you don't have to be a fisherman to enjoy this book, right? This book sucked me in because of all uh, I guess the descriptive nature of being on a boat, some of the details of kind of the rock and I really felt like I was on the boat, right? And it's got to be a little bit daunting, and you take a risk when you try to write in words about the feelings and the sensations of something so visceral as being out there. But I
Hmm.
think you pulled it off, and as I said, that's what kept me reading. I wanted to feel like I was on vacation. This guy's taking me fishing. Okay, let's do that. And that's kind of what I the way I approached it, and why I enjoyed it. So how do you physically write? Did you decide you're going to sit down where you're sitting right now, or did you write how did you write and where did you write?
Well, sometimes I would do it right sitting at the desk like I'm doing now. Other times I would go take a walk outside and I would sit down as the thoughts came to me and put it into my phone and have it down. And then I would just repeat the cycle. I would do it walking. You never know when the right words will come. So always have something ready to write down or put into your phone so you keep it down. Once it's down on paper, it can't be forgotten. The whole process took about a year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the my book is 146 pages long, which is not a it's a, short read basically. But it took about a year to get it right in the way I wanted it.
Okay. Did you have an editor as well, or did
Yeah,
you self edit? So you had somebody
a,
look
a
at it?
little of both. Yeah, some of both. Yeah, I had an editor, my publisher, Mindster Media. I used some of their editors as well as myself.
Okay. And was that helpful, did you find?
Yes, actually, the proofreading more than the editing in my case. I think the wording pretty much I got it the way I wanted to. But the proofreading was definitely helpful. Definitely.
Yeah, you mean things like spelling and punctuation and formatting. Yeah,
punctuation and that kind. Yeah,
that's
yeah,
everybody's Achilles heel.
yeah.
I still look at I've got books that I've written. The first one I wrote and published was 2016. I go back and every once in a while I'll actually read the published book in my hand front to end, and every single time I find something that I missed. I do all self-editing, and I have an online an app called AutoCrit that's actually really good at catching that stuff. But even now,
Mm-hmm.
after I've read the freaking books over and over again, I see things I would have worded differently,
Yeah,
stuff I would
yeah,
have said, I would have either deleted or said differently.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
just like
yeah,
an artist. You look at something and you say, God damn it,
yeah,
I should have done that
yeah,
instead. But,
yeah,
it is what
yeah,
it is,
for sure.
as
Yeah.
opposed to Stephen King, who I read. He did an interview once in which somebody asked him, does he ever go back and read his older, some of his first books? And he says, oh, no, that's like dead skin. It's gone. It's done. I did what I
Hmm.
did. I'm moving on to other things. It stands the way it stands. So, I guess you can agonize forever over your books, but why? Do you think you're
Yeah.
going to write again? I write another book?
Maybe about I want to do some comedy maybe and some because I like laughs. So there were a few laughs in the book actually, but I do enjoy humor and I enjoy maybe I'll write something about baseball related.
Oh, really? So you're a
Yeah.
baseball guy, baseball fan?
Yeah. Yeah, I grew up, I was a college ball player in Pennsylvania,
Really?
and I was a Pirates fan back then, but now that I live in Florida, I'm a Rays fan.
I was just at a book fair, and I was at a place where there were like 60 authors showing off their books. And here's what we need to do, Bob. We need to write children's books, because I
Yeah,
swear, man, children's books, every
yeah,
single table with a children's book author had three people deep, and they
yeah,
all had kids, and
yeah,
every one of those authors writes about some specific thing. And
yeah.
I'm never going to write a children's book, but if you really want to cash in, you want to make a children's book and sell it right next to your pretzels. That's what you got to do.
Yeah, children's books are, I think they're number one. Although I will say this book, A Flicker in the Water, is good for kids starting around age 7.
Yeah, I would say it's
Mm,
absolutely
yeah,
G rated, and
yeah,
it's definitely, a family oriented activity, fishing and
yeah.
whatnot. So tell us one more time, where can we find A Flicker in the Water?
Well, A Flicker in the Water is at my website, flickerinthewater.com. Any bookstore can order it for you, or online at Amazon or Barnes and Noble. But the best one-stop shop for everything is flickerinthewater.com.
As I said, I enjoyed the book, and I, heartily recommend it to our viewers and listeners out there.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining me, and be careful out there.
Okay.